Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wild Wild Podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, or welcome back if you've been with us for, getting on for 3 years now, I think.
Is it?
We are in, I know, something like that. We're in season 7, so averaging about 2 and a bit seasons a year. That seems about right.
Okay.
Yeah, very cool. I am Adrian Smith, and I'm joined by the very prolific and highly praised podcaster and commentary recorder, Rod Barnett.
Hello, one and all.
And so, of course, we have to begin the podcast by mentioning that the news has just broken today that Roger Corman passed away yesterday, age 98. And obviously, that is a great age, but I still think you're allowed to be sad about it. He's one of those guys who you just feel like was always just going to be around forever. I mean, I think he was still producing. He never retired. He was always going. Amazing guy.
Yeah, he's one of those people who kind of crept into my mind, into a certain little room that made me think that he's just always going to be around. There's not going to be a time we're going to have to think of as post Roger Corman. And sadly, of course, that's ridiculous. And today proves it's not true.
He was unstoppable. Even when the first lockdown came in, he immediately, with his wife, they launched a sort of lockdown filmmaking competition that he would be the judge of, where people could make short films and send them to him. And this is like a man who's already in his 90s and could be forgiven for seeing the pandemic as a chance to put his feet up. But it just never stopped.
Yeah, everything is an opportunity as far as he's concerned, apparently.
Yeah. I was actually lucky enough to meet him about 10 years ago.
Oh.
They had a Gothic season at the BFI, and so one of the key events was a Q&A with Roger Corman, followed by a screening of The Pit and the Pendulum. But then what was really cool was that after the Q&A, there was a sort of about an hour gap before the screening, and he just basically got a table set up in the lobby area and sat and signed autographs for the whole hour.
Wow.
This was a guy who was already in his, I guess, mid-80s, late 80s, and he sat there, he signed autographs, he shook hands, he posed for photos. It was the coolest thing. To be in the same room as Roger Corman was so exciting.
Yeah.
And then to actually get to queue up. And I'd brought with me, I didn't know about this. I don't think it was announced. It was a kind of impromptu thing that he said he would do. But I always go to the BFI ready, just in case. So I had an Apache Woman lobby card that I brought with me. And he was impressed. Well, at least he pretended to be. I mean, he's just a nice guy. So, yeah, just obviously in terms of his importance in relation to our podcast is without the fall of the House of Usher, there would have been no Mario Bava making Gothic horror and subsequently kind of reinventing the Italian horror and everything like that. So he made a big impact.
Yeah, often referred to as the King of the Bees, with good reason. I think that in odd ways and in ways that are beneficial to fans of genre cinema the world over, he kind of did often lead the way down certain genre paths. Pointing toward even when he's copying the more lavishly budgeted Hollywood productions, he's finding ways to put similar, if less expensive product out on the market, and often making something that, if not as good, at least good enough, and sometimes actually very good, so that it became profitable to take note of the fact that you can produce these things on the budgets that you can actually afford and make them in a way that people will want to see them, that will actually enjoy them. And so for that, if nothing else, and Lord knows there are plenty of reasons to be happy that Roger Corman's career was so long, so prolific, and so and so wondrous in its output. I mean, there's there's an argument to be made for him leading the pack in so many different ways and so many different forms of film production. But at the same time, his passing, I mean, can't be unexpected. But in a way, it really was, because he just seemed as if he would go on forever.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. What a guy, and what an impact he made. I mean, that documentary from about 10 years ago was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where everyone just talked about how important he was, and obviously his work with AIP, particularly in the 50s,
Yeah.
reinventing what cinema could be, basically, and the fact that movies don't have to all be aimed at family audiences.
No.
Targeting the teenagers before
Exactly.
Hollywood had the same idea,
Exactly.
and creating the drive-in market, and just amazing. I was always amazed. It's a little bit like when recently people have been talking about this new cut of Caligula, and then there was a sort of press statement from Tinto Brass complaining about it, and my first reaction was just, wait, what? Tinto Brass is still alive? Like,
Yeah.
how is this?
I think more than a few of us were shocked. Yeah.
And it's kind of like a bit like that with Roger Corman, because he's somebody who was making films in the 50s, such an amazing legacy, and then like, hang on, wait, he's still around. I think his last public appearance was just late last year. He did a really good Q&A on Mick Garris's podcast.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it was part
Yeah.
of Beyond Fest, where they did a big Roger Corman event, and loads of people were there, Joe Dante and a bunch of others. That was really good. His memory was still just really, really sharp, and it was so cool to hear everybody there just telling him how grateful they were for their careers, and also obviously just for the films themselves. So yes, a sad day, but a good opportunity to reflect, I guess, and a good excuse to sit down and watch a load of his films. I just actually, only about a week or two ago, I watched the recent Blu-ray restoration of, which one is it? Mask of the Red Death.
Ah.
And if you have the UK Blu-ray, that features as one of the bonus content on there is that Q&A from his evening at the BFI, which I was in the audience for. So it's really good. That's worth having a look. It's about an hour long. I did actually ask him a question, but they didn't include those bits. They don't include the bit where they throw it open to the crowd on the DVD. But I asked him a question. I can't even remember what I asked him, but I took the opportunity because I'd recently watched one of the films he'd produced. I think it was Dino Shark, and and he actually appears in Dino Shark. He gave himself a short acting role as a scientist. I'm assuming because they were out on location and it was cheaper to just do the part
Oh,
himself.
of course.
So I congratulated him on his performance, which made him laugh. So yeah, really cool guy, and just what a legacy. I was just reading some of the comments, and something like 500 films he produced in his career.
Yeah.
And directed over 50, I think.
Well, my plan is to celebrate his life. I'm going to sit down and watch the recently restored Blu-ray print of The Terror. It's been one of my favorites for a number of reasons. One, I enjoy the film as the narrative that it is, but also I just love the fact that everybody knows how bizarre the backstory is on how the stupid thing came together in the first place.
I need to get that one. There's what's the other film on that? Is it Beast from Haunted Cave?
No. Oh Lord, now I've completely forgotten which one that's paired with.
Is it? It's Film Masters. Is that the people that
did it? Yeah, it's a
Film
Film Masters Blu-ray, and I cannot remember what it's paired with now, which is really sad. It's downstairs too, because I can't just reach across the room and grab it.
They're doing some amazing restoration work and some of these things that they've put on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I need to get that one. But yes, so that's obviously the breaking news. It seems like it's quite trivial to move on to other things, but move on we must, and we could talk about Roger Corman for days.
Yes, easily.
Yeah, I mentioned his influence on Bava, which gives me the excuse to mention. I think I forgot to mention this in the last episode, that the Malombra Films restoration of the Road to Fort Alamo They've done a full restoration from the original negative at Cinecittà Studios, and where Vinegar Syndrome had already set in on a couple of the reels, one reel in particular. So the restoration took a long time, but it was well worth the wait. It looks great. It looks better than you will have seen the film before. I know everyone likes to sort of dismiss the Bava westerns, but I really enjoyed this one, and particularly because Ken Clark is the star. Well worth seeing this restoration. I do know. Have you seen it? I don't know.
I haven't seen this restoration. No, I've seen the film, but it has been a very long time.
It's worth a revisit, and unfortunately, Tim Lucas kind of slagged the restoration off on.
Yeah, believe me,
Facebook.
I read that. Yeah,
And I don't know what he's talking. I honestly don't know what he's talking about. And obviously, one of the reasons I'm involved with this because I did the commentary track with Leon Hunt, who's written an excellent book on Bava. And so in the commentary, we're talking about how great it looks. And Tim Lucas obviously watched it with our commentary because he picks up on that because he can't understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I can only assume there's something wrong with his TV because, trust me, I've checked this on my own telly, and the print that I was watching when we did the commentary is the one on the disc.
Well, if memory serves, he was saying that certain portions of the film look absolutely fantastic and other portions don't, and I'm wondering if that's part of the restoration process. If there were damaged elements in some reels and not others, but I don't know. I haven't seen it, so.
Yeah, well, definitely was damage, but it's really minimal. I mean, it still looks better than if you're watching it on YouTube. And anyway, it's a shame that he felt the need to put everybody off buying it because it's already pretty niche.
Very, to say the least.
Yeah, but I wanted to plug that because it's well worth getting, and it's as good as it's ever going to look. And they did basically save the film from being lost forever to Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah, I would love to get a copy of that. I just haven't managed it yet. Yeah.
Well, there's too many things coming out all the time.
I know, it's madness.
Good grief. It's impossible to keep up. Have you got anything recently that you want to mention or plug from your many productions?
Oh, well, nothing other than, I guess, the ongoing podcasting, which after slowing down considerably in April, I'm ramping back up in May. Thank goodness. I've gotten well. I hate to admit to this, but it's kind of terrifying in a way. Is that occasionally I will end up covering on the Bloody Pit a movie that I don't think is particularly good, and that's done for different reasons. Either co-hosts are fans of the film or want to bring attention to it, or I think that there's something involving the film in particular that even though I don't enjoy it particularly, that it's worth talking about. And I hate to say that, unfortunately, the two episodes that are going to come out in May, one of which is already out, and one that will come out here in a week or so. I fear it's two episodes in a row of films that I didn't particularly like, which is terrifying. But at the same time, one of them is insanely obscure, which is Ghost Catchers from 1944, a Universal horror film that is much more of a comedy musical than it is a horror film. And
then is the other one, have you finally done Grunt, the wrestling movie?
No, that will, I guarantee, never occur, because the moment that I feel now that at this point, after years of telling my co-hosts no, that if I ever did do that, then I would be hit by a bus the next day. So I would hit publish and then die, but it's not gonna. So therefore, no. But the second film that'll be coming out on the show in May is a much better known film, but one that may actually be even worse, which is Mark Maddox and I finally talking about Star Trek V, and it is a miserable film and one that both of us despise, and so we just spend 2 hours enumerating the reasons why it stinks. And so I do feel bad that 2 episodes in a row involve movies where Troy and I are not particular fans, although we do find things to enjoy in Ghost Catchers. There's some really good songs in that particular movie, which the fact that it's supposedly a horror film and the best elements of it are songs will tell you one thing. But And then there's, we've known for over a year since we started covering these first 6 Star Trek films that we were going to get to 5, and there was just no way around the toxic waste dump that it is. So I'm hoping to get back on track and talk about a movie that I don't actually dislike. So
Well,
I apologize.
from an audience perspective, it's often more fun to hear people talk about films that aren't very good.
I can understand that. So.
I'm certainly hoping that's the case for today's episode.
Oh, well, yeah, I think you may be mildly surprised then.
Yeah, no. It's not actually quite enjoyed it. The only other thing I wanted to mention, just plugging my own stuff, is that the latest issue of Cinema Retro, which has just come out, features a big, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 page article by me about Pretty Baby. So quite far out of my usual area of films I write about, but I do tend to be drawn towards films that have some sort of controversy around them. So
and that film certainly qualifies.
Yeah, because the film's been about a year ago now, probably restored and put out on Blu-ray in America and Australia. So I was sent the Australian imprint Blu-ray, so I wrote an article about the film and the controversy and the aftermath, and yeah.
Oh, for Americans, the word he's saying is controversy, just so that you know.
Controversy. That's true. I need to remember that, because looking at the stats, like 9/10 of our audience are in America. So I apologise for all the English anachronisms.
I won't ask you to pronounce aluminum either, so.
Good. Right. Let's, speaking of pronunciation, we've got some good names in this week's episode. We are, of course, continuing with the comic book style superhero, supervillain movies. And some of them that we've done have been based on actual comics, but I don't think today's is at all. It is more just sort of spoofing and ripping off to a certain degree the 60s Batman and Green Hornet TV shows.
Yeah.
We are, of course, talking about the Fantastic Three Supermen. And I'm going to play in some music here. This film, I think they could only afford 2 pieces of music in the whole movie. There's one piece in particular.
Well, I have to say, at least one of them is an earworm that I cannot get out of my brain. So.
Well, so there's one piece that just plays every few minutes. They stick it in again. So to kick us off in our discussion of the Fantastic Three Supermen, I fantastici tre Supermen. I don't know how you pronounce Superman in Italian. Anyway, Fantastic Three Supermen. Here's the music. Later on in the film, there's a kind of groovy 60s moment, so I might play that music in later. But yeah, Fantastic Three Supermen. Now, again, this is a film that I've watched for the first time. I know you mentioned on Facebook that you had seen this before, and you had thought you would never watch it again.
Well, here's the thing. I have to do a public mea culpa. I was mixing up 2 different movies that I saw within, an alcohol haze with friends sometime in the 90s. And so it is with a large, possibly bulbous nose and a bright red face that I have to admit that the Three Fantastic Supermen is not the film that I remember watching and thinking was like having a cheese grater dragged across my kneecaps.
Okay.
Yes, that film, it turns out, was similarly titled, Super Stooges versus the Wonder Women.
Aha. Now that film, I've got that on our list.
I know, and I'm going to dislike you for that. But the Three Fantastic Supermen, either I had not seen all of or had seen, like I say, while inebriated, possibly, because I had no solid memory of it. But then again, I could have watched it completely sober and let 20 years pass by and still really have no solid memories of the story or anything like that because it is not a plot-heavy film. Publicly, I would just like to say I actually enjoy the Three Fantastic Supermen.
Yeah.
I'll reserve my judgment on Super Stooges versus the Wonder Women if I'm forced by my podcast partner to rewatch it.
I've got a plan for that one. But yeah, so it's kind of, the Super Stooges one is kind of connected because it was also called Amazons Against Supermen. And there's a sort of, they're kind of sequels because after this film, there was
there was the one
Supermen
in Tokyo.
Three Supermen in the jungle, which I'm assuming you would like.
Maybe
Supermen Against the Orient, the Three Supermen in the West, and then of course your one, which was directed by Alfonso Brescia, friend of the show. They also then went off to Turkey and made Three Supermen Against the Godfather.
Oh Lord.
Three Supermen at the Olympic Games.
Okay.
We went to the 80s by this point, and then the last one apparently in 1986 is Three Supermen in San Domingo. So yeah, truly bizarre.
I guess by that measure, we would have to say this was a successful film series.
Yeah. It was sold worldwide. There's a great poster. The American poster has the tagline, "Move over King Kong, 007, Bionic Man. Here comes the Three Fantastic Supermen."
Well, that's bizarre because, I mean, this thing, it was produced in like 1969, so I'm guessing that means that it wasn't really released in places like the United States until sometime in the 1970s. But
yeah, because the Bionic Man is mid-70s, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I've got a feeling, I was looking at UK dates, and it was released in the UK in 1968, but it appears to have been re-released in the mid-70s as well. So it's probably just really,
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
the print was just hanging around. But yeah, so it's directed by Frank Kramer, aka Gianfranco Parolini.
Yes.
And it's right in the middle of his run of Commissar X films,
right,
starring, by no coincidence I'm sure, Tony Kendall and Brad Harris. Now, another confession is I've never seen a Commissar X film.
I need to finish seeing all of them. I've only seen one or two, and I need to see the rest of them because the ones I've seen I've enjoyed, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So the two stars there, Tony Kendall and Brad Harris, and the same director here. So they're clearly just they're having an unbroken schedule of work and taking a little break from the spy films to do this, which in many ways clearly is borrowing from the Eurospy.
Oh, borrowing from, well, let's enumerate the things this film. Well, we'll do that later, but let's talk a little bit about the director's career because the more I look at his career, the more I'm kind of impressed and realize just how much of his work that I've seen. He did the Sabata films.
Yes, all three, I think.
Yeah,
certainly the first two.
yeah. Well, he did Sabata, Adios Sabata, and Return of Sabata, and of course, Adios Sabata is the one that's really not a Sabata film. It stars Yul Brynner, and they call it a Sabata film, but it's really not. It was originally titled something else. So
fancy an Italian film misleading people like that
with the title, no less.
No way. Yeah, and he did a lot of Peplum films, and this film feels again very much like Peplum meets Eurospy,
very much
meets
so.
Superhero. One of his films was Samson, which I know I've definitely seen. That's a good one.
Fury of Hercules, which I've just recently watched. Yeah.
And as Roberto Curti points out in his book, he came up with this sort of formula that he's then repeated several times because he did the film The 10 Desperate Men, which was bringing together 10 of these strong men into one movie. And then he did another one then, The Three Avengers, and then that's going into the Fantastic Three. And then I think he also did a similar thing. He did war films where he had this kind of thing.
Five for Hell and things like that.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. And why not? It's a good idea. Why base a film on one cool person when you can have 3, 5, or 10?
Plus, it allows you to, kill off one or two of them as the story goes on. So.
exactly. Yeah, very prolific. One of these guys again, just working in the genre, whichever genre was making money at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's done biblical films, Peplum films,
Well, he
Eurospy.
also did, and let's not slight the man. He did one of my favorite, god awful, completely terrible King Kong ripoffs in 1977.
Oh yeah,
Yeti, Giant of the
uh,
20th Century. It's a terrible, terrible film, but I gotta tell you, I'm so glad it exists.
mm. Yes. If we ever do a sort of giant Italian monsters film, I'm not sure we could do it a whole season, but maybe we should try and find a way to fit Yeti in at some point.
We could probably find
Yeah,
maybe 3 or 4 of them, right?
yeah, I would have thought so. He also wrote a lot of his own scripts as well. If you look at his
Mm-hmm.
filmography as a writer, it's most of the films that he directed, which is interesting. And sometimes he's acted in his own films as well. He's not in this one, but he does pop up in some of the Commissar X films, and he did one of the Sartana films.
Oh,
So
it does put me in mind of, since we've been talking about Roger Corman. It's like, well, I'm much cheaper than another actor. So
yeah, exactly. I'm available. So here we go. Yeah. So this was the only of the Fantastic Three films that he directed, and I think the only kind of superhero type film. He just went after this one. He went straight back to the continuing with the Commissar X films and things
mhm.
like that. Um, but yeah, so this cast, we mentioned Tony Candle and Brad Harris, both veterans of the Peplum, especially Brad Harris. I mean, that guy is stacked.
Oh yeah.
My goodness.
Anytime
He,
in this film, you see him with his shirt off, and it's just one of those things where you're just like, he looks sculpted. It's astonishing.
yeah,
Yeah,
any excuse to get his shirt off, he takes it.
of course.
He, uh, and obviously, yeah, did several. He's American, I think, isn't he? And he came
Hmm.
over and,
From Idaho,
mo-
of all places.
just following Steve Reeves
Hmm.
into the Italian industry, having done bit parts in American movies, and then yeah, had a lot of success in Italy. Again, he's in Samson, so they knew each other from a few years earlier.
And Fury of Hercules. So
Oh yeah, there you go.
yeah,
So they'd
so
worked together.
early on.
Yeah, just a really long and interesting career, and he only actually passed away a few years ago. So I assume there must be really good interviews with him out there.
One would hope so. I'd like to see some kind of retrospective
Yeah,
documentary about him, because for a long time, and this is a sad statement on my own views on this. I kind of ignored him because I thought for the longest time that Brad Harris had to be some kind of Italian pseudonym,
yeah,
and therefore I kind of assumed, okay, he's this guy's really good at pretending that he's speaking English well, and that's really
yeah,
great, because it makes the dubs look kind of that much better. But come on, and then it was years later that I figured out, oh, he was an actual American. He's another one of those guys who
yeah,
went over to Europe and made a lot of movies.
yeah. And
And
he wasn't afraid to do the occasion. I mean, he's like obviously he's in some Jallo.
mhm.
He popped over to the UK to do the Mutations, which is a really weird.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
also, I think it's called the Freak Maker.
Freakmaker,
But
which is, I finally saw that just this
yeah,
past year. Yeah.
but oh, it's so good. He's in The Beast in Heat, which is pretty funny,
Hmm.
and then he's also ended up in a Bruce exploitation film. He was in Challenge of the Tiger. So, and of course he's been on our podcast before because he was in Hercules
Hmm.
with Lou Ferrigno.
Well, and also, I think the last time we spoke about Brad, I stumbled across a listing in his resume for a film called Zambo, King of the Jungle, and I have since
Oh
then,
yes.
I have since then watched that, because it's sitting on
Oh yeah.
Tubi in a pretty crappy print, I will admit.
How was it?
Not great. It's not a good movie, but it is interesting enough. So
Is he the Tarzan character then, the Zambo?
yeah, a kind of a Tarzan character, but not really,
Right.
because he's a guy who, he grew up in normal civilization and then takes to the jungle on, by chance, and then just decides to stay there. So different kind of character to a large degree, but yeah, not a great film. I would love to see it one day restored and spruced up a
Of
bit to
course.
give it a better chance at changing my mind, but
Yeah.
let's just say that Brad Harris is someone I'm returning to pretty frequently here lately.
Oh, cool.
I'm just so shocked. And of course, the reason I don't know this is that I I, I was checked out of watching this kind of stuff. But he was on multiple episodes of Dallas and Falcon Crest in the '80s, and I'm just sitting here
Uh-huh.
thinking to myself, my lord, what a long, strange trip.
Yeah. Yeah, he did do one of the other three Superman films, the Three Supermen in the Jungle, which obviously he had a taste for being in the jungle.
Mhm.
And yeah, loads of cool stuff. He played Sabata later on in one of the other Sabata films, and Django, and
Mhm.
just yeah, whatever was needed, he was there. If you need a guy who looks amazing with his shirt off, give him a call.
It's true.
Yeah, and so he plays an FBI agent in this film, and the film begins with actually there are only two Supermen to start with, played by Tony Kendall,
In other words,
and
at the beginning of the film, there are only
yeah,
two lunatics in red underwear
yeah,
running around.
Tony Kendall and Nick Jordan, aka Aldo Canty, and I want to mention both of them, particularly Aldo Canty. But Tony Kendall, apparently he was a bank clerk, which worked in banking,
Mhm.
but he was so good looking that it didn't take long before he got discovered and became an actor. I think he'd worked with Vittorio De Sica, I believe, who encouraged him to change his name and become a kind of heartthrob. His original name is Luciano Stella. Stella meaning star, of course, in Italy, which is fun. So he was
Yes.
Luciano, I can't say it. He was Luciano Stella, aka Tony Kendall, which does sound like a good American sort of hero name.
Mhm.
And yeah, so he's obviously Commissar. Is he the Commissar X? I forget.
Well, he's essentially kind of he's Walker, who's
Yeah,
essentially the main character in those. So yes.
Joe Walker. Yeah, yeah. So he's done lots of those, but I guess a lot of people would know him from The Whip and the Body.
Hmm.
So he did do the more kind of arty stuff as well. Um, but yeah, just someone else who had a long and interesting career. He ended up in some Decamerotici films in the 70s as well. He did a Three Musketeers film, which is intriguing. And he's in one of those Blind Dead films.
Yes.
So you'll probably know that.
He's
which
in
I've never
he's in the
seen.
yeah he's in the second Blind Dead film, and he also worked with Amando de Osorio in the Loreley's a Grasp as well,
Ah.
wearing the whitest white pants you will ever see on film.
So do you think he went off to work in Spain then?
Oh, I think he bounced
Must have
back and
gone.
I think he must have
Yeah.
bounced back and forth a lot, which a lot of these actors did. I mean, some of the actors in this are German. I mean, it's always multiple nationalities in all these films. So.
Yeah. And we have to mention, so he's basically a kind of safe cracking bank robber who dresses up as a superhero, and he has a partner in crime, literally,
Mhm.
played by Aldo Canty, aka Nick Jordan, and Aldo Canty is playing this character as a mute, but for some reason, but he just has this insane giggle.
Which is one of the detriments of this film in my book because it gets old really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it grates very quickly. But what's interesting with him is that he was a stuntman, so he wasn't an actor at first, but he obviously started acting in films as well. But primarily he did stunts, and in that guise, he's in quite a few cool things. He's in the Gamma One films, for one
Yeah.
thing. He's in lots of Peplum films. Um, he's in westerns and all kinds of stuff, playing him with a role or doing stunts. He's in one of those terrible Alfonso Brescia War of the Robots, Battle of the Stars.
Mhm.
I can't even remember which one we did on the podcast, but it's the one it's the one that put me to sleep while I was watching it. Um, but anyway, the main interesting thing about him is that he was basically a stuntman, but also involved in Rome's underworld. And
Yeah, that's what I've read.
yeah,
Yeah.
so he apparently in 1966 he was arrested when he was found driving a car with no license, and he had a bag full of lockpicks. And at some point in the 80s, he served time in prison. And then in 1990, he was found dead. He'd been shot in the head in Villa Borghese Park in Rome, which is a big park just up behind the Spanish Steps, if you're ever there. But yeah, so he was found dead, and I don't think they ever found who did it, but it was clearly underworld related. So it makes you wonder whether, because he was, originally he was a kind of circus, as well as a stuntman. I think he'd got skills from the circus, and this film uses a lot of circus performers too. So whether he was using those skills to break into stuff for real, it's like, was he really doing what they're doing in this film?
I don't know. It would not surprise me, given both the way his life ended and a lot of the rumors about. I mean, there are rumors that he was being let out of prison during the day to make this movie. It was, and then returned to prison in the evening
really?
to continue serving his time. But I don't know if that's true or not. I read that in a couple of different places, and I'm like, that sounds a little fantastic. I don't know how a producer would be able to arrange to do that, but I mean, who knows?
I mean, he's the most athletic, because although these Supermen wear capes, they can't fly, but they can jump, and they're using trampolines a lot. It's very much like
let's talk.
It's very much like the way they did wuxia films in the late '60s, early '70s. There's lots of trampoline action. But
yeah, this is one of the reasons why, another of the detriments. And believe me, I do like this movie, but there are things in it that I have to forgive it for. And one of the biggest, this is a bugaboo. This is something that runs a lot of spaghetti westerns as well for me, which is the hidden trampoline BS.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. And this movie, I can't decide if this movie compounds the error or just wants to play with the audience and point out that, hey, yeah, we know that you know that we know that you know. But because there is one scene where they go out of their way to present placing a trampoline in a certain place so that they can pull off a certain stunt to do what they're going to do. But the rest of the time, in other words, like 90% of the time, we're trying to, they're pretending that there is no trampoline there when that's what is happening. And it gets on my nerves, man.
That one that you mentioned is pretty impressive. There's a quote here in the book from the director, Parolini. He says, "Today these effects are done digitally, whereas back then they were performed on the set and stuntmen were personally taking the risk. Aldo would jump out of a window 20 feet high, do a somersault, bounce on the floor, land on a wooden trampoline, and jump into a Ford which started at full speed."
Mm-hmm.
And that bit in the film is pretty impressive when you see what he does. He jumps from a really high window, bounces, leaps over another car, lands in the back of their car, and then it drives away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is quite cool.
It's very cool. It's very impressive. There's a lot of different kinds of really impressive stunt work in this movie. Not just the physical stuff that that particular stuntman / actor is doing. All of them are doing some really impressive stuff. They're all very physical and athletic, and it shows. They've obviously trained in tumbling and acrobatics. It's very impressive to watch. But even some of the other things that you wouldn't necessarily expect, a lot of the car work, the driving, and things of that nature, all of that is really impressive as well. This is a movie that is really nothing but a string of ridiculous ideas, getting you to the 90-minute mark. And they change things up well enough in the action category because the movie just, that's its saving grace. This movie really never stops moving. The few scenes where you start to check out are the scenes where it slows down a little bit, explaining the relationships between certain characters and making sure that there is an actual plot that we're following here, and just enough of a mysterious nature to what the villain is doing. to kind of engage someone. But in all honesty, the only reason this movie exists is to get us from one action set piece to another. And almost all of them are really fun.
Yeah. And Roberto Curti mentions that this film is aimed at children, but I was surprised by that because there's a whole thing near the end where
Oh yeah,
the villain is basically going to murder a load of children.
yeah. He's replicating a group of children so he can kill the non-replicated versions of them and use the replicated versions to his own evil ends. It's
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
which is what? What's he going to do with them?
Oh wow!
Really,
Now I've completely
I
forgotten.
don't know what he was going, what he's going to do with a group full of kids that he couldn't do with the real kids.
Oh well, he controlled them. He can control them. He can make them do what they wanted. Yeah, he can make them do what he wants them to do. So there's that.
As long as what you need doing can be done by a 6-year-old. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can get away with a lot when you control a bunch of children.
True. So, shall we talk about the plot and then we'll pick up on it?
Sure.
So the film begins with FBI agent, although we don't know he's FBI at the start, recruiting 2 masked thieves, Tony and Nick, to steal some money. And initially they're stealing from him. They're stealing from him.
He sets up a sting so that he can reel them in and make them listen to him. Yeah.
And then they agree to help him steal the load of money. And then which turns out to be from a gang whose leader, Golem, plans to rule the world, of course. And they steal this money but discover that it's fake. And that's when he reveals that, yes, we're not just trying to get this money back, we're trying to find out who's making the forged money and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, he wants to know why they've got these amazing superpowers, because they can withstand bullets. That's their main superpowers. You can shoot them, and the bullets just bounce off.
Yeah, you can fire just round after round of blanks at them, and nothing happens.
As long as you don't shoot them in the face.
I guess.
Because they're not wearing hoods, which you'd think they would. And quite often, they just take their masks off and still run around. Like, they're not bothered about their secret identities at all, half the time.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm about to make a giant mistake that I warn other people about. I'm going to attempt to inject logic into an illogical situation, but the masks themselves, okay, if this suit that they're wearing, if this clothing that they're wearing in some way is bulletproof, well, then of course you'd want something covering your head, and you still have to be able to see. So yeah, eye holes, I get it. But at the same time, just yanking it off occasionally, it's like, you're just begging for one of these FBI agents to, crack shot you from far away and sniper you into a grave. So I don't know. I'll leave it alone. But also, just out of curiosity, what's with the little mini capes that they wear?
I know, right? It's really funny. It's like, who does it remind me of? Do you know, sort of, it's the kind of 1920s look with that sort of short cape, or like Adam Adamant, the 60s semi-Doctor Who type hero.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the kind of cape that just comes down to your waist. But again, if the cape is so protective, as we find out later that the cape has powers, you'd want a long one, I would have thought.
Well, it's like they're already... And here's another thing. Once again, I apologize for my attempt to do the logic thing here. If you need to wear this red underwear because it's bulletproof, why not just wear normal clothes over it so you don't draw attention to yourself? Yeah. Hey, look, there's a freak running around in red underwear. What the hell?
I know. But they have to take their normal clothes off to put their costumes on.
Which makes zero sense. Just wear it underneath.
There's a few times in the film where they have to stop and put their costumes on, which reminds me of the new... Have you seen the photo that's just been published of the new Superman?
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there, like, pulling his boot on.
Yeah.
And that just got me thinking, I thought Superman's costume was always under his clothes. So at what point...
Oh, yeah, but not the boots. So yeah.
When he goes into the phone booth and he spins around and comes out with his clothes on, where did the boots fit into that equation? Does he carry them around in a bag?
Clearly, you and I are clearly falling into the logic trap set by these stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
Sorry.
funny. So anyway, so Brad, the FBI agent, he wants to know where these costumes come from. So they introduce him to Professor Schwartz, who has invented these costumes, and he's currently working on, because these costumes will do everything apart from be fire resistant.
But he's now made that improvement, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that's one of the easier things you could do with material.
Shh! Once again, the logic thing. Stop it, Adrian. Come on.
And Professor Schwartz has a daughter, and she at some point has been in love with Tony, and there's been a whole history between them. But they've been lying to the professor because he thinks that they are using his stuff for
the government,
good purposes. The government, yeah.
Yeah, but
actually they're using it to do crime. Mm-hmm. But now, of course, they are with the government because they're with the FBI.
Now, well, you want my favorite logic trap that this story sets up for us?
Yep. Yes, please.
Okay, the movie starts. The opening shots are of all these newspaper stories and media stories about these fantastic supermen who seem to be bulletproof, who are doing all this thieving, and it's this insane crime wave. And somehow this professor and his daughter have no idea this is going on and put two and two together.
Yep. Also, those newspaper headlines are all in Italian. But I think we're not in Italy. We're in a different country.
Are we not in Italy? Okay.
I'm confused. Because,
okay, that's another question. But
also
FBI cannot function. They cannot operate outside the borders of the United States. If you're outside the United States, it would have to be the CIA. I'm sorry, but that's true. So what in the world is going on here?
That was my next question. Yeah, where are we? I'm pretty sure we're not in America.
No, look at the scenery, look at the buildings, so no, we're obviously somewhere in Europe.
They shot the whole thing in Yugoslavia.
Okay, makes sense. That makes sense.
The film is in Italy, Yugoslavia, France, West Germany co-production in the best kind of Euro spy, Euro pudding style.
Euro pudding. Oh, that's a phrase I'm going to use forever now.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought we are, because there's a whole thing about this other country, an embassy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing about where we are.
Which I mean, if we're just doing a big screen comic book, that's fine. I mean, it's perfectly okay. But at the same time, it's one of those things where are they using the catch-all of it's essentially aimed at children as a get out of jail free card for not really working out the details of what's going on here. So
it's like Diabolic, which is set in France, but it's basically Italy. Yeah, doesn't really matter, I suppose. And we also forgot to mention they can walk up walls.
Which third detriment here. If you're going to depict people repeatedly walking up walls using suction cups, do not have them do it in such a way where they're obviously defying the laws of gravity. Have them crouch down.
Yeah. So
that it looks like they're having to use all four limbs to accomplish this, or once again, only children will buy this sequence. So,
because if you're walking up a wall and your feet are stuck to the wall, but the rest of your body is subject to gravity, you've got to have an incredibly strong core to be able to walk. Surely, you're having to fight against gravity with your whole body.
Well, not only that, your cape is going to need to kind of point toward the floor.
At least when Batman does it, he's got a rope.
Mm-hmm.
He's thrown his batarang and he's pulling himself up along the rope.
Precisely.
But these guys just walk up the walls. It's good.
Like I say, your get out of jail free card is this was made for kids. Okay, I understand.
So as well as being an amazing, if gullible, scientist, Schwartz has also made this kind of duplicator that will duplicate anything that you put in front of it.
The universal replicator.
Yeah. And that is where all this forged money has been coming from. And he can tell because it's exactly perfect copies.
Mm-hmm. With all the same
Which
serial
then-
number, yeah.
But if it's this, yeah, which I guess is the only way they know that it's forged, is because the serial numbers are duplicated. But anyway, that's when he realizes, oh no, this is my machine, but I destroyed it. But I'm the only person who knows how to rebuild it. Oh, apart from this guy that I used to work with, but he died in a car crash. And who's that, by the way? Oh, that's Golem.
Yes,
by the-
yes, Golem, the evil scientist, yes.
The German actor Jochen Brockman, who is playing it very much in the sort of Goldfinger vein,
Very much so, yes.
which is quite funny. And yeah, so he, uh-oh, what's happening here? So, and there are also, so Golem has henchmen and henchwomen,
Yes.
if that's a thing. Henchmen, henchwomen, that doesn't sound right.
Maybe just
are helping
maybe just
him.
hinge people.
Hench,
I don't know.
hench people, because they kidnap Schwartz and his daughter because they want him to help them make the machine make people. I think that's the problem.
Right, because the replicator that the good doctor came up with. It can't replicate people. It can replicate inanimate objects, but not people. And that's the jump he wants. He wants to be able to replicate people and move beyond that problem, because he has a world domination plan, as you might expect.
Yeah, and there's some quite fun stuff where the people that do get replicated, if you kill one of these replicants, they turn into little balls of glass, which is quite fun.
Well, and before they turn into little balls of glass, they first become a cartoon cutout of lightning on a red background.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So they track them down to an island base, again in very much Eurospy territory here, where they've got this hollowed out island with a full power station inside and all kinds of stuff going on. But on the top, to sort of, for cover, they've got what appears to be some kind of orphanage where they've got all these kids that they're teaching. So some of the evil hench people are disguising themselves as teachers.
I love hearing you kind of come to a certain plot point and trip yourself up, realizing, wow, this is crazy. Yes.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to think of the name. There's a woman called Zizi, I think, or is that the girlfriend? I get confused about which girl is which.
Oh,
which is terrible to know.
Well, what it is the girlfriend is Zizi, and she's played by Bettina Bush. And Diana is the evil henchwoman played by Rosella Bergamonte. And yeah, I think those are our required 2 female characters in this film. So yeah.
And to maintain cover, they're doing when our heroes arrive, there's some kind of major press conference / diplomatic event going on at the site. And there's a kind of party, and our heroes end up having to dance, and this is where we get the next bit of music. There are 2 pieces of music in the whole film. So here's the 60s dance music.
Okay, let's go.
Enjoy yourself. You don't think you'll make it out of here alive?
Be good, honey. You wouldn't like your guest to know the truth, would you?
We should mention the composer.
Well,
Actually,
aren't there?
is there a composer?
Well, that's just it. There are 3 names listed under the music credits, which makes me wonder if some of this music may have been composed. Not all of it, certainly, but some of it may have been composed for other film projects, or possibly as part of the stuff. Because there's some of it that's incredibly effective. That's kind of lower key stuff that is during more tense sequences of the film, and it makes me wonder if some of this is being used from previous productions or if it's library music. But I don't know. But there are 3 names associated with the score.
3 names
Yeah.
for basically about 5 minutes worth of music. Because
you're being a little cruel there, but I'm not gonna throw the flag on it. So yes.
because every time they need some music, they just play this again. Yeah. Oh, it's Simushir. I think are we in the country of Simushir? There's a whole thing about meeting the ambassador of Simushir, and
but isn't that because he's coming to visit? I can't remember. It doesn't.
Or I thought they were something to do with funding the power station. Somehow there's this connection with
something about that sounds familiar.
The power, yeah. It's this plot is like sand slipping through your fingers.
Yeah, because everybody knows it doesn't really matter. It's just an excuse to motivate the good and the bad guys to get to the next set piece, and that's all it really boils down to.
Yeah, basically they've discovered the big underground base. There's children in peril.
Mm-hmm.
There's a replicating machine that can replicate humans. Meanwhile,
well, the Golem has kidnapped Professor Schwartz to help with this project. Professor Schwartz is trying to come up with a way to both help to keep himself and his daughter alive, and to also find a way to sabotage it so that he won't be able to concoct his plan and spread it around the world with these replicated children.
And if you can do replication and you've suddenly got 3 fantastic Supermen in front of you, what are you going to do?
You're going to replicate them.
You can replicate them too. Yeah, there's lots of fun to be had here, really. And I think if you do watch it in that sort of Batman, this is really quite silly and for kids mode, then it's fine. Right? It's quite fun. I mean, Roberto Curti says the humour is often puerile, with many slapstick gags that were already old hat in the silent era.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not wrong.
But the film is a lot of fun. I mean,
yeah.
you'd have to be pretty mean-spirited to not get some fun out of this mess. I mean, it's maybe it's a little too much fun, because the entire film does start to kind of fall apart while you're watching it, because if you are watching it as an adult, especially for the first time, and trying to follow the plot, there comes a point when almost any adult is going to realize they have to throw up their hands and go along for the ride, or they're going to just be sitting there with a puzzled, confused look on their face for the entire rest of the running time. Logic doesn't exist in this thing. It was never there in the first place, and so trying to figure out the narrative is it's pointless. Let it fly by. It's colorful, it's fast, it's silly, it doesn't make much sense at all. The only times in which it makes sense are during the requisite set pieces, where those are stuntmen doing their amazing work in front of the camera and really kind of paying off why this is here. I mean, you mentioned earlier this seems to be some kind of bizarre combination of Batman and the Green Hornet and James Bond and comic books and, I don't know, Zorro, a blue billion things that they're slinging together, things that were very popular, very much in the public mind as far as entertainment in the mid '60s, and so the effect of it is of a bizarre Italian stew of stuff that, occasionally you bite down on a piece in it that really shouldn't be in there, or doesn't seem to really go with all the other stuff that's in the stew. But it's, you keep going because the base of it is okay. It's fun, silly, stupid stuff, and emphasis on almost all of those.
And clearly a hit, like we said. It spawned sequels. It was distributed around the world. It was particularly popular in Turkey, where they knocked off several more of those later on. And here I couldn't find much about its distribution in America.
Yeah, I don't know,
In the UK, it was distributed by Miracle Films. Miracle Films were run by Michael Myers, who is the man that John Carpenter named his Halloween villain after. because Michael Myers and Miracle Films distributed the Assault on, what's it called?
Assault on Precinct 13.
Thank you. Suddenly my mind went blank. Yeah. So anyway, so Miracle distributed a ton of films like this in the 60s and 70s. So I found a review. It was reviewed in Monthly Film Bulletin in August 1968. And it says the acrobatic antics of the title characters, who prefer somersaulting their way out of danger to shooting. The principal actors are doubled in many of their scenes by a team of Italian tumblers. Provides a welcome relief from the standard secret agent judo syndrome. So that's pretty good. But, inevitably there is a but. But the ingenuity of this comic strip adventure film begins to pall after the first half hour, and the inevitable final holocaust in the master criminal's lair is brightened only by the villain's diverting scheme to produce an army of robot villains who all look like the hero. I mean, that's not too bad. I've read a lot worse.
Very true. Very true. I could sit and nitpick away at this thing to the point where I would start to wonder why I enjoyed it as much as I did. But it's kind of pointless. That's not the type of film it is.
I wonder if there will ever be a time when we get a Three Supermen box set.
You know, from what you're describing, considering, I mean, I'm guessing it couldn't be complete, considering that there were so many different production companies across the decades. I'm assuming that would be probably impossible.
Yeah, there's at least 9 films.
That's crazy.
By different
and I think it's hilarious that almost no film-to-film continuity as far as actors are concerned. Almost no actors returned from film to film to film.
No. Well, once you've got the mask on, you're fine.
I suppose. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, a lot of this movie rests on the shoulders of the on-screen charms of Tony Kendall and Brad Harris. They are buying into this completely, and even though they're not the acrobatic madman that is their third member, they are very physical and very good at all of the stunt work style stuff that needs to be done on screen as well. So they're very believable, as well as being just charming on screen. So
they have really good chemistry, and there's a lot of good banter going on between them, which I'm guessing is sort of, again, following on from the Commissar X films, where there's a similar level of that between that relationship that they have. I haven't seen any, so I don't know.
Well, I think I don't know that I'll ever really be pulled towards seeing any of the others, because, like I say, the thing that I enjoy about this is that it is a series of fun set pieces, and so maybe that would draw me in. But also, it is those two actors in the lead there that really kind of made it fun, because they are really in the spirit of this thing. And I think that clearly they were thinking down the road as to the possibility of making more of these. I mean, the closing message of the film is there's an awful lot of dollars waiting to be stolen if you know how. So it's a question of, well, what will the next criminal / adventurous slightly wink heroic adventures of these three Supermen be? But
which again ties in with things like Criminal and Diabolic and all these guys where the hero of your comic is a villain. But obviously, because it aims at children, they've got to be villains who don't really get away with it. Crime can't pay in these films, I suppose.
Well, not in the comedic ones, but the deadly serious ones. Things do take dark turns. So
Anyway, there we go. So that is the Three Fantastic Supermen. Our next film, when we come back, will be Derelic, which, if you listen to the last episode, was a film neither of us had ever heard of until it came up in a review that we read for Argo Man. So, but it looks like a really interesting film, so I'm looking forward to that one very much.
Yeah, that one's a complete mystery. That's a black box that I can't wait to open up. Yeah.
Very good. So I'd just like to mention some feedback that we've had before we finish. Very quickly, we've had a few things that have come. People contacted us on Instagram and so on. Just wanted to mention a couple. one of our many listeners, John, got in touch to say that there is a new Your comic book. So I looked this up, and Antarctic Press is reviving Your, the Hunter from the Future, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the original Argentinian comic.
Wow.
So keep an eye out for that. It looks like I don't think it's an endless run. I think there's like four issues.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out in July. So keep an eye out for that. The 50th anniversary from the original comic. So if you like Your, the Hunter from the Future, and who doesn't,
Yes.
then definitely look out for that. Now, I posted about a month ago a mini episode reviewing Lunar Diamond, which is a new screenplay published by Luigi Cozzi with his Profondo Rosso print. And the co-author is somebody called Stephen Ross. And so I posted this on our YouTube channel. Do all check us out on YouTube, by the way. Which reminds me, I was going to mention, we just recently hit 20,000 downloads on the podcast. So thank you, everybody. But over on YouTube, I only started doing this, I think, in December. We're up to 9,500 views on YouTube for the podcast. But way out in front with 6,500, nearly 7,000 hits is the Sexbury Tales. That is still our most popular episode on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's hilarious. But anyway, so Stephen Ross spotted this on YouTube and he left a comment which I wanted to read. He said, "Thank you so much for the wonderful review. The screenplay was written to be the basis for a comic book adaptation. The first draft was a direct prequel to Star Crash, but we had to remove all of the names and references due to rights issues. To take an additional step away from Star Crash, and because Caroline Munro is synonymous with Stellar Star, Mr. Cozy and I went back and forth dream casting Lunar Diamond. I suggested some Bollywood stars, but then I suggested an Italian actress from another one of my favourite films, Ornella Muti, Princess Aura from Flash Gordon. Wow, Ornella Muti.
She's stunning, yes.
We need to fit her into the podcast at some point. Luigi was...
That is not how I thought that sentence was going to end, but okay.
Luigi was very enthusiastic about that choice, especially because he almost had the opportunity to work with her. Again, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the screenplay. I hope that you will like the comic as soon as I can get around to adapting that script. So, hey, there you go. I didn't know that at all. So I was reading this thinking this would make a great comic. And so that's interesting that it is going to be a comic eventually. There's some really good artwork in here, which looks like they've been sort of testing out what it could be in comic form. So, yeah, you can get this from Amazon, so it's not hard to find. But well worth picking up. It's a really good story. Very much, if you like Star Crash, you'll like the Midas Star. But it's interesting that I didn't realise it was a prequel. When you read it, it feels like it's set in the same universe. They talk about the haunted stars, for example.
Right.
But, interesting that it was originally a Star Crash prequel. And I mean, who doesn't want to see Luigi Cozzi back in the Star Crash world, even if it is only as a script or as a comic?
Oh, I would love to see it as a comic book. That would be a blast, yeah.
It would be really cool if that happens. I'll keep in touch with Stephen Ross and hopefully he'll let me know if that does happen at some point. But anyway, there you go. So if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate if you pop over to Wild Wild Podcast on YouTube and subscribe and like and all that stuff. The more subscribers we get, I think when we get to a certain number, it means we can have a decent URL name or something. So anyway, do that. And also, obviously, the more people that like and subscribe on YouTube or on whichever podcast platform you're on, it really does help us to rise up in the old algorithm things there. Anyway, you all know this stuff because you all listen to lots of podcasts and everybody asks you to do that. But please do give us a review or a rating, or just tell your friends, or strap us to a rocket and send it into space. Just, whatever. Let's spread the word.
Communicate our existence to the haunted stars.
Exactly. Let's get out there. That's it, I think. Thank you, Rod, for doing this again.
Glad to do it. Thank you for the opportunity.
And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back soon with Derelic, where we will both be learning something new there, I'm sure. Until then, I don't know. be good to each other.
I guess we should end with those wonderful words. There's an awful lot of dollars waiting for you to be stolen if you know how. So go out there and give it a shot, folks.
Okay, I'm just getting my suction cups onto my shoes as we speak.
And you know what? I'm strapping on my mini cape because clearly that's going to help.
Okay, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.